morning. Good to see you.
Welcome, everybody. Oh, these mics are really loud. Actually, everybody's looking quite okay for last day, few hours left. I just want to start off by giving a good round of applause to the IGF band. I don't know who here is from the IGF band, nobody? But I thought so thank you for music night. It was great. Yeah, thank you. Vint, you want to start us off?
Yes, thank you so much, Carol. I have just a few things I'd like to draw to the attention of the participants. First of all, huge thanks to the Norwegian government for supporting this IGF on such short notice. I had a meeting with the Dynamic Coalition. Yes, absolutely. Thank you. I had a meeting with the Dynamic Coalition on Accessibility and Disability, and they were very, very complimentary of the treatment that they received and the help that they got in consideration of their special needs. I thought it would be useful to summarize the kind of thinking that I have come away with as a consequence of this week, looking towards the remainder of this year. One, of course, is the population of this informal multi-stakeholder panel to advise the WSIS Plus 20 co-facilitators, half coming from MAG and half coming from the leadership panel. Applications have been sent in and decisions will be made about who will serve on that panel. The purpose there is to funnel as much as possible the recognition from the IGF participants of things that need to be considered as WSIS Plus 20 looks at IGF's future and also the future of the WSIS action lines. We will also be paying close attention to the development of a final report for the Secretary General, and I'm looking forward to the collaboration of the leadership panel and the MAG to produce that report, which would be given at the end of the year, in December. I also want to overemphasize the importance of the NRIs. Many of you are engaged with those groups, and they are our feet on the ground in some sense. You are the place where we can get clear information or clearer information about what's happening around the world with regard to Internet's utility and functionality and policy associated with it. So the NRIs are super important to us. We'd like to see more connection between the NRIs and the member states where that linkage is not strong. And we certainly hope that the NRIs will help us compose an assessment of Internet utility around the world. Metrics for useful access to the Internet coming out of the UNESCO metrics, for example, would be very helpful. And certainly, not least, policy assessment so that we can understand from the NRIs and other participants in the IGF how policy is emerging and being executed in countries around the world. Meaningful access is of course, fundamental, and the Policy Network on Meaningful Access met more than once during the course of this week and summarized in many ways what meaningful access actually means. And a great deal of it has a lot to do with utility and sustainability, affordability, reliability, all those desirable properties that we repeatedly remind ourselves of. Finally, with regard to the IGF itself, as we look towards the next 6 months of work, I think we need to start asking ourselves how IGF should evolve. That notion and that word came up repeatedly in many of the different meetings during the course of the week. And I keep thinking in my head that there should be a paper called The IGF We Need. You know that the leadership panel together with the MAG put together something called The Internet We Want. But I think we also need to think about what is the IGF that we need going forward as the Internet continues to play an increasingly important role in our social and economic environment. The last point, at least in this list, is funding. And I see two targets. One of them is the Secretariat, which needs about $3 million a year, but never quite gets that. And I am committed to continuing to provide support for that operation and to try to increase the funding sources that are available. But the NRIs also need support. And I'm also very interested in linking the Internet Society activities with our work, particularly the chapters that are around the world that are effectively co-located with the NRIs and often have the same members. The Internet Society Foundation and the ICANN Foundation are all potential sources of support for that work. And so I will make it a point to include that in my agenda for the remainder of the year. So Carol, thanks so much for allowing me to begin this discussion. I turn this back to you.
Okay, thank you. So just to talk about some of the things that Vint mentioned, especially the NRIs. We've been talking a lot about having the NRIs being feet on the ground, ears on the ground, eyes on the ground. But what does that really look like? Do we really know what national or regional or IGF looks like within their country, how they operated, how they're funding? What are our expectations of the NRIs? We talk about it a lot, but I don't think we've actually discussed what that should look like. And then secondly, what Vince said just now with regards to funding. How does that look for them? Because most of them, it's voluntary. They try to get as much funding as well for themselves. So we need to put some type of resource and structure behind the expectations that we have for the NRIs. We just can't say, hey, NRIs, over to you. What are we handing over? What are we asking? What are the expectations? So that's something that we really need to start to think about. Anybody on the floor? Oh, we don't have mics? Oh, yeah, we're going to need to bring the mic to the center, I think. Yeah.
Not for me. No, I wanted to speak about funding, but if you want to speak before about what we expect from the NRIs, it's different conversation.
Your hand went up first, so go ahead.
Okay. I don't know, Vint, if you are looking to us, but I'm Raul here. I have identified at least 6 groups that could be active in funding IGF, and I brought this to discussion in our last meeting in Geneva. Briefly, if I recall it, this is private sector, technical community, international organizations, including UN, civil society, including foundations that currently fund projects on civil society, development banks, and I forgot one. Okay. So I think, but the idea is that my view is that if we have a target, for example, of 30 million for 5 years, because you say, Vint, that we need 3 million for the secretariat, but we need more resources for the secretariat, and we need resources for NRIs. So imagine that we have a target of 30 million. We should look for a formula where we decide or we propose to the community which percentage we expect each of those groups to contribute. So I think that it should not be difficult. If we bring private sector together, that are much more companies than the ones that we usually have in mind, and we say, okay, guys, we need, I don't know, 6 million from you for the next 5 years, and we talk to development banks that they are taking advantage of the results of those processes for doing their job, and there are many development banks in the world. And if we talk with the foundations and civil society, I think that's if we go with clear goals to talk to them, it should not be too difficult to get the problem is the same problem that we have had ever, that is that who do that? So we need somebody in charge of addressing each of those groups and have this conversation. Thank you.
Cheryl?
Thank you. I'd like to take it back to the NRI question that you had, Carol. That was why my hand was up. And I just note that I know I've seen different manuals, but at the regional level, sort of for the development of NRIs, I think there's an African manual to help folks sort of guide through it. And I was wondering, do we have a broader manual on that? Like, has the MAG ever developed that, or this is a question I honestly don't know, and forgive my ignorance, have we always left it to just every individual country?
Yeah. No, I wasn't really talking about how they function. I was talking about what we are expecting them to do with regards to things like capacity building. The other day I had a meeting with UNESCO. They want to connect with the NRIs in terms of doing their Rome X project. They also have a capacity building project that they want to use the NRIs. So there's a lot of let's use the NRIs, but what are our expectations of them and how are we going to assist? And I'm going to let Amrita jump the queue because she's she's very involved with the India. Go ahead.
Thank you, Carol. And obviously the Indian hat is there, and as the chair of APR IGF also, there are two parts of it. If we are saying what is it we are expecting the NRIs to do in terms of capacity building, etc., we also have to ask ourselves the questions as to what and how are we supporting the NRIs with. Because each NRI is different, they work differently. In some places it is purely civil society driven, where the governments are also not involved. In some places the government is engaged and they help in the agenda shaping, so it helps. So NRI as a group is not the same, it's not apples. It's apples to peaches to bananas. But the main question is, what is the support we give them? And what is their expectation from us so that we also can set the expectations?
Mm-hmm. So based on that, Amrita, I thought that each NRI should have a MAG, which makes it multi-stakeholder. That does not happen then? No? Okay. Olga?
Thank you. Thank you very much. And thank you, Vin, for bringing this important thing about NRIs and funding. I think we should also think about all the activities that were created in relation with the IGF, NRIs, dynamic coalitions, schools of internet governance, and many universities are doing research in relation with the IGF and multi-stakeholderism. So that should be also a target for funding and should be considered in a way as NRIs, which are, of course, very important. Thank you.
Anne Rochelle?
Thank you very much, Chair. And this is Anne Rochelle. I love what Raul talked about. But as you said, I think we really need to look into what is it that we do for NRIs. Hand-holding is good, but feeding is not. And one of the things that I really would like to see, national and regional IGFs do, it is to know their own local stakeholders. Go to them and find the ways to make sure they show them what's in it for them too. So that year after year, they will come back and fund it because they see a purpose to it. But I don't think it is the role of the global IGF or the MAG, to find funding for the NRIs. Really. Support is good in showing them the way, listing all the people that they can work with. And I think at one of our meetings, I said it from the beginning, it is also important that they really know what is going on the ground. What are the problems that people are having that we're trying to solve with technology? What it is that, those people can fund because of that, because the solutions are responding to problems that people are seeing. So for me, it really has to be support in, yes, helping them identify anything from the cooperation frameworks that the whole UN is having at home that are going to include, that have included WSIS action lines, ODDs, SDGs, and also now, the 5 items coming from GDC. There's no reason why, all of this cannot be collated region by region, nationally, so that, the people who are going to fund really find something to, that is relevant to the local community. Thank you.
And same table, yeah. We're gonna walk straight to the back, okay? Right there.
Thank you, Carol. This is Charles Chaban from the International Trademark Association. And, but I will reply to your question, which is exactly what we discussed yesterday at the Arab IGF forum. In fact, we were discussing how to outreach more people. So I think what needs to be done by the NRI, including the Arab IGF, which I was, by the way, the last chair of the ITSMAG. They didn't choose anyone yet, so I'm still representing it in this capacity. It's mainly how to outreach the new people who maybe we couldn't reach them until now, to be honest, because we always, when we sit down, we see the same people on the table, especially youth. I think we need to find a way how to help them to reach the youth in specific and other some rural countries, areas, let's say, of the countries. The same problems as we were talking yesterday too about, and now Raul mentioned funding. I think, we should have some kind of institutionalization of the program in general. The last thing maybe to answer that, when we started, we have really multi-stakeholder, many governments who are participating, many civil society people, and maybe less private sector. But at the same time, over the years, we see every year someone is lacking behind. I'm not sure what's the reason, but I think we can go back to what you mentioned exactly, Madam Chair, which is capacity building and outreach. Thank you.
To the back.
Good afternoon. Irishio Michael from Zambia. So to contribute to this debate, I happen to coordinate the Zambian NRI, the Zambian IGF. So basically, the issue of funding, I know it's been a thorny issue all these past years, even at the time I served in the MAG area on the first 3 years. So basically, I would still suggest that the Secretariat find a way in which they can have direct input to the funding of national IGF. Why am I saying so? Because when we go to solicit for funding from our communities, our business and technical sectors, the funding normally comes with a condition that somehow may not sit well with the vision and purpose of the IGF. We've approached some certain sectors to fund us. They've come up to say, we are ready to fund you, but the whole event will have to be decorated in the corporate of the funder. That defeats the whole purpose of the IGF being multi-stakeholder, because once the business community starts funding you completely 100%, it simply means that they take over the running of the NRI. So in order to avoid this, it is imperative that at some point the Secretariat comes in. Of course, we can ask for help in one way or the other, but that should not be the overall help that we should be seeking from the private sector because of the nature and the vision of the IGF. Thank you.
Teresa. And then we're going to come to the front.
Thank you. Vint, I really like the way you outlined some very specific actions. So with regards to the NRIs, and I know that we've spent some time talking about it, but I think we also have an opportunity to help connect the dots. So UNESCO, for example, is undertaking a lot of initiatives, making sure that the UNESCO contacts are with the NRI contacts at the local and the regional levels. I think many of us are contributing to funding in relation to NRIs and events specifically. Let's get an overview of that and see where there's gaps and where there's things missing, and then how through the funding model we can actually help contribute to that. I think the other areas are, we have the ISOC chapters, we have with ICANN fellowships programs, we heard from many of the governments, they have next generation programs. Let's figure out how to introduce the people to each other and make sure that we're helping to connect the dots. So that might be something that is within the MAG, we can just share information and get that consolidated and provide that at the levels. In relation to funding, fully agree. Each sector should take a look at it. Obviously, from the ICANN perspective, too, we have the community that's engaging in different dialogues about how we might also be able to contribute in different ways. We have a grants program, but it's different than a foundational, so needing to take a look at that. I think more generally, we should also make sure that we're looking at the output of this meeting and providing that as a report and a basis that even the NRIs could use in their dialogues on contributions. So we have a lot of work underway. I think we just need to harness it and take it, and that might ease how we want to effectively get the work done before December.
You have to go behind. Lynn? This side. Valeria. Who's on the list? Lynn? Lynn?
Thank you very much. A few years ago, the APC put together 2 editions of the Global Information Society Watch, offering analytical perspectives of the role of the NRIs, the achievements, but also the vision that they have for the future of themselves. So I just wanted to offer those editions that are there. I think they are a kind of a starting point and something to build on in relation to the role that they can play moving forward, and also in relation to supporting them financially. I think there has to be a distinction between 2 main areas of supporting the NRIs. One that has to do with the organizations and the operations of the organizations that help sustain the process, like acting as executive secretariat or facilitators of the process, and an additional component that has to do with actually providing resources to the local, national, regional communities to be able to engage with the process. Those are 2 different elements of the financial support, and the different stakeholders could prioritize one or the other, but I think the 2 have to be taken as a holistic element if we want to support financially the NRIs. I would be happy to, in relation to the first point that I brought up, I would be happy to circulate these 2 editions of the Global Information Society Watch. I would really like to invite all of us to look at them because they outline a vision of themselves for the future that I think would be a nice way to also reflect about the role that they could play in the upcoming future.
We have Suki, Lynn, Alhaji. Okay. So yeah, we have the list. It's a long list.
Yeah, she has also her hands up. Yeah.
Okay. Oh, we have somebody online as well.
I have 2 comments actually. First of all, on funding, I think we have to look at that a little bit more strategically. And I have to say, as Gia said, and we are making a contribution also to the IGF Trust Fund, but also to the NRAs actually. So we are supporting NRAs directly in the regions. And I think no one really has an overview of what is being needed actually. We only say, okay, there is this IGF Trust Fund, but how much of the percentage is really going to the NRAs, and how much of the budget, the funding, can they generate themselves actually at the NRA level. The other thing is that on funding, I have to admit, I mean, as I said before, GIZ is making a contribution and it's coming to an end this year. And it's so difficult for us to continue our contribution, although we want to, because we don't have anything that we can really plan for, you know? I mean, and this makes it really difficult at the moment. So even as a donor that is willing to contribute, the challenges are so high. And the other thing is that I also wish that we use this IGF more strategically for getting some fundings, because also in my case with GIZ, our executive board member decided not to come because the confirmation for the high-level seat, a panel seat, came out very, very late. So and then I thought, okay, maybe we should really think more strategically on that. The second comment I would like to make is on the document that should be drafted, what you also mentioned, Vint, the IGF we need. So first of all, I really like the report from ICANN and ISOC that summarize the footprints of the IGF, showing what we have achieved. But I think we also need a second chapter on the IGF we need, as you said, Vint, or what we would like to continue or to improve if the IGF will be extended. I think, and now if the Secretariat or the leadership panel would like to have some support from IGF, please come. I mean, this is an offer that I can make, that we can have someone who can draft, or who can develop the first draft that can be then commented by us all, because I know that drafting the first thing is always the work, you know, that has to be done. So if you need support on that, please feel free to approach me.
Thank you. Anju, then Lynn. We'll go to online. We see Constance and Vint. He's on the list.
Thank you, Chair. In terms of funding, I just have maybe one proposal. One of the things that we're doing well in the Pacific is working closely with development agencies and donors like ADB, World Bank, and we have quite a lot of forums like the Asia Pacific Telecommunity Forum, UN supported forums, etc. So there is an opportunity for us to pitch for support from these high-level donors, because there's quite, that they want to ensure that there's participation at the regional and also global IGF. And in regards to the point you made about UNESCO ROMEX, we are also part of that, and the NRIs are leading that for the Pacific. And one of the things that we put together was to make sure that these NRIs are supported by UNESCO to attend the regional forum, or sessions are funded or co-located or cost-shared. And there is also a Diplo Foundation CADE initiative currently, and they are supporting a lot of the NRIs, the new people to participate in the IGF. And again, there is a cost-sharing mechanism that can be applied here. Please feel free to talk to Diplo Foundation on that. And two things that I just wanted to mention is that it is our responsibility as MEG members to bring the right people to support the NRIs. It is our responsibility to look for those funding to support the NRIs, and also bringing the right people to support the IGF process. And the last thing is, many of us are funded by the IGF Secretariat, so you can also reach out to us to support you when there is a gap, or how we can support the Secretariat in simple things like moving the mics is one thing, or something else that we could also help with. I know that many of us are leadership, but we are here to support you, and we need to find new ways of helping the Secretariat so that it's easy for you and you don't have to worry about cost efficiency problems.
Go ahead.
Oh,
then
great.
We're going to go to online.
Thank you. Just to be brief, I concur with the issue of the NRI funding. Yes, we may say it is not the Secretariat to help in fundraising, but the Secretariat can offer support in mapping. Different, as a person who has run a successful national IGF in Uganda and also in Africa, we've had struggles, but I think back to what Varia mentioned, of who is heading these NRIs. Are they under an institution? We also know that there are NRIs that are just, they are babies, and there are those that are mature in the process. So that strategic mapping, knowing who is funding, I think there's a bit of, I'm trying to find the right word, but scattered information on who is funding the NRIs. You'll find there's the IGF Support Association, there's ICANN, there's the Internet Society Foundation, GIZ, but can we have this in some sort of centralized kind of, platform, and maybe the Secretariat can help in kind of bringing that together, and then we can see which NRI needs what kind of support, at what level are they at? Are they at a much more mature level, or are they just starting up? Because NRIs are doing a lot, and at times, even I've attended the NRI sessions, but the participation is also not that good.
Yes, we need to be
within the NRIs, the sessions that we are having here. So we need that kind of, platform that can bring us together, but it is visible to everyone.
Okay, Constance and then Vint? Or was it Vint then Constance?
Thank you, Madam Chair, and apologies for not being with you today. I had to travel back very early this morning, so apologies for that. Coming back to this issue of the NRIs, thematically, and to address, I think, your initial question, thematically, it could be very interesting because of the capillarity of the NRIs, because they're really connected to policymakers at the local level, to have them carry or continue deepening the work, the intersessional activities. So the best practices, the policy frameworks, the work of the Policy Network on Artificial Intelligence. All of that work is even more relevant if policymakers at the national level, industry leaders are aware of it. And the NRIs in some countries, I know there's no general rule, some of them are extremely well connected to policy makers. It's the case here in Paris, for instance. This leads me to my second point, which is more organic, the financial aspect of the question. And here I really support what Anne-Rachel was saying. I think we want to help the NRIs, but we don't want to, we shouldn't be, completely feeding them. Some of the NRIs actually have less difficulties than the global IGF to connect with local sponsors. Some of them are doing well, some others need support, and ISOC Foundation, ICANN Foundation perhaps certainly are helping here. And I think the funding question is also something to think about, because, for instance, if the UN suddenly started to fund the NRIs, this would mean some sort of endorsement. And we know that, NRIs tend to flourish. The IGF brand, how do we protect it? So I'm just thinking that, the national level, the NRIs perhaps need to stay free. And at the same time, we suggest that they pick up the intersessional activities, feeding into the next global IGF. Thank you very much.
Vint?
So first of all, I think Constance had made some very good points, and I'd like to endorse those. It occurs to me that the NRIs vary quite significantly in terms of their functionality and their connections with the private sector and with government. I wonder whether the NRIs would help each other if they would outline how they are operating and share that information with the others. I don't mean to pick on anybody in particular, but the CGI.BR seems to be an extraordinary structure with government engagement as an integral part of their activity. And so that the Brazilian situation seems to be quite effective in terms of drawing parties together, including policymakers. So learning from the NRIs, sharing how they are operating with each other might turn out to be very useful. And I'm sure that the Secretariat would be happy to help funnel summary descriptions of the operations of each of the NRIs so that the rest of them can see how they are operating. But we can learn a lot, I think, from just listening to what the NRIs are currently doing.
Thank you, Lynn.
Thank you, Chair. Lynn Sainamore, former MAG Chair and ISOC President and CEO, with a lot of experience in chapters and relationships between chapters and the central structure, if you will. These are both very important discussions, the funding, the NRIs, and the intersection of those two. We have a strong NRI collaborative point in the IGF Secretariat. I mean, maybe the best thing to do is to treat them as partners, not parent-child, and a significant portion of this discussion has really reflected more parent-child relationship, I think, than equal partners, and really get some sort of small working group or just work strictly through the NRI liaison, I know that's not the right word, but in the IGF Secretariat, to bring these conversations to fruition and understand what they are. We found in ISOC that they were really good at saying, these are the standards we want to hold all our chapters to. We didn't have to do that from the top down. When you get people around the room, they want to be responsible to the mission, they want to achieve something, you know, they want to do well, and they want their other chapters to reflect that as well. So I think if we engage them more directly at the grassroots level and really start that discussion with them, it should include the funding as well. But principles of operation, principles of standards, ethics, all those things will just come up naturally, I believe, from discussions through the NRIs. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Alhaji, then Gunala and Chris.
Thank you very much, Chair. Alhaji, the MAC Chair for Africa IGF, and a member of the MAC as well. At the level of the Africa IGF, what we have done first is to develop a charter. That's the Africa IGF Charter, which clearly indicates the responsibilities of all of us, including the MAC. And part of the responsibilities of the MAC also is to look for those funders. And what we are trying to do now is to also engage the government, because the government cannot be off the equation. For example, in the Gambia, I just spoke to the minister responsible for digital economy, where I asked him to create a budget line item in the budget of the ministry called an IGF, where they can actually support the country. Because when it gets to the parliament, I'm there as a member of the finance committee, I will be able to stand to defend that particular budget line item. So you're going to see that the government role now is to help to support the IGF, and until the IGF is able to stand on its own. So government is actually going to take the lead next year, where they're going to have a budget line item through the parliament and then be able to support. So these are some of the things that we actually are doing. But I think it's important that the MAC of the NRIs actually have a very clear mandate, and one of the mandates should be, how do we get funding from the private sector? Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Gunala and Chris.
Hello, this is Gunnar Lastbrink. Firstly, I'd like to say thank you very much to Vint for his support of people with disabilities, and in particular, the Dynamic Coalition on Accessibility and Disability. So my comments about NRIs in particular and generally will be about accessibility and persons with disability. I'd like to refer to the Internet Society Foundation, which, as we know, provides support for NRIs. And in part of the application form, it refers to accessibility and the importance to consider, not more than consider, actually review and use the DCAD accessibility guidelines. And I believe that there's also a question in the application form about accessibility and what a particular NRI might be planning to do to make accessibility part of that particular IGF. So I'm just wondering how we can do more within the IGF framework to embed that accessibility philosophy. And I refer back to the Internet Society and the board resolution to have an accessibility implementation framework in order to build a culture of accessibility and minimize barriers to participation of persons with disability. And that could be also in line with a UN disability inclusion strategy for all UN agencies to ensure that persons with disability along various pillars are included in any particular work. Coming back to just accessibility of venues and so forth, again with NRIs, to refer to those accessibility guidelines, but also maybe if they are new to the concept of accessibility, that they work with a local accessibility disability agency that can really go through a venue's accessibility, because sometimes we don't realize that there might be some parts of a venue that are not totally accessible. And while this particular IGF has been excellent when it comes to accessibility, there's a little hidden number of meeting rooms that only can be used by stairs. And so there's always things to consider. So I just leave those thoughts, and I would be happy to work with the Secretariat in any way to look at such an accessibility framework. Thank you.
Thank you. So the line has been drawn on speakers. So we now have Chris, Chris Jen. Poor Jen. Chris, Jen, Nee, Raul, and Cheryl.
Okay.
Sorry. Yeah. Let's go, Chris. No, Chris, Jen. Zigzag to the back.
I'm sorry again, I have to leave.
Okay, so yeah. We soon have to leave.
So I'm very mindful of that we have limited time. There's a couple of points I want to bring in here. I think this has been a really interesting discussion and wide-ranging. I'm a little concerned about that we only have this hour to use because I'm very aware that we have now 6 months, really 5 months as a MAG to do the work that is related to all of these things. And what I wanted to do is suggest, as a practical straw man suggestion, feel free to shoot it down, 5 areas that we need to do work on as the MAG in the next 5 months. One is funding. We need to develop some thoughts about that, how to improve it. Second is engagement with NIRs. Clearly, we have a lot of thoughts on that. Third is a review of the intersessional models. Fourth is recommendations on the IGF institutional structure. I think we've heard a lot about that this week already, and there are things like
Sorry, repeat that, Chris?
Sorry?
Can you repeat that?
The recommendations on the IGF institutional structure.
Okay.
So things like how the MAG, the leadership panel, etc. I know we have the IGF We Want paper that Teresa mentioned. We have the non-paper from the Australians. There are ideas circulating now, and I think we're well placed to discuss those and provide some thoughts. And then the fifth is IGF event evolution. What do we want the IGF yearly event to look like? So I would really suggest that we think about very quickly moving to 5, say, working groups or committees that can produce this. I don't think we can all work on all 5. That's not efficient. But we have a group here that is very expert and has different areas of interest or expertise. We need to, I think, have reports or recommendations or something to come out on each of those before the WSIS Plus 20 event in December. I think we need to demonstrate that we've engaged with this and really taken our role as this special MAG very seriously and thought very deeply about all of these aspects of the IGF that we've been talking about. I'm sort of stopping there on that point. One other thing, I know we don't have much time, but the working group strategy yesterday discussed having the MAG and leadership panel provide a response to the co-facilitators on the WSIS Plus 20 elements paper. So I think the working group strategy is happy to sort of take the first steps in preparing a draft, sharing that. Obviously, time is of the essence, as the deadline given to us at this point is 15th of July. But I'm happy to discuss that more, perhaps on a mailing list, and make sure that we are all aligned and understand how that's progressing. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm going to try to be brief, but I'm going to plus one on everything that Chris just mentioned. So two things I wanted to point out. One is the funding piece, but I'm going first to the gaps piece. So if we're going to look at those 5 areas of work as, you know, the 2025 MAG, I think what is best for us to do, we were the ones triaging this, looking at the work that has been done before. We're not spinning up. There is the non-papers, there is the expert working group who have recommendations that came to the IGF, taking a look at those recommendations, if they still apply right now, if those recommendations haven't actually been implemented, why they haven't been, what is the blockage there. So we're learning from all these recommendations in the past, what hasn't worked, and finding ways to actually get to where we want to be. So that's the first thing I wanted to say. Coming back to the funding piece, I think a lot of MAG members have mentioned this. I don't know if they've actually mentioned the IGF Support Association. I think a lot of people around this room are current executive committee members and previous committee members. And I think this is a vehicle that we've set up to make fundings flexible. If we haven't succeeded thus far with IGFSA, we need to understand what is going wrong here and how we can make it better. If this isn't the right vehicle, then we need to find the right vehicle to be able to reach. Number one, the funding for the IGF Secretariat to keep the lights on, right? And secondly, in a bigger piece, and it becomes bigger and bigger because the intersessional work is becoming more important. How do we do that? And then finally, I'm going to end with, we had a discussion on day 0 morning about innovative funding, how not only we're actually supporting the NRIs and the global IGF, but how they themselves also can find sustainable funding. So it's 2 pieces together. I know ICANN has, at least the community has been talking about whether or not we can leverage some grant monies. There is a chunk of money there. I think technical community is really ready to step forward. Same thing with private sector, actually articulating what the value proposition it is for private sector to continue to engage, as well as continue to support financially and in kind, how we can make IGF and the NRI sustainable. So I'll stop here.
Thank you, Desiree, Nii, Raul, Cheryl.
Yes, I'll just be very brief and say that it is a bit strange that we're having this conversation without having people from NRIs in this room. So we should facilitate some...
Plenty NRI persons here.
Well,
plenty NRIs.
No, I meant we should know ourselves who they are, and they should also do a mapping exercise and peer learning in terms of what works, and maybe they already do this, but I'm unaware. So anyhow, for the sake of being very short, I support what Chris has said. There's a lot of work we need to do together with the leadership panel, try to have a more structure, to have input from NRI, because as Lynn has said, there are peers. There's no hierarchical structure. And I think a lot of NRIs are have MOUs with the technical community organizations, and some of their policy briefs should be mentioned in national regulation. So we need to really get this thing where we have local realities reflect at the IGF and global norms, and this narrative worked out perhaps a little bit better. Brainstorming on the funding, it's a tough one, but let's take it on as the MAG and get everyone's idea on a paper as well. Some of the big platforms this week at the MAG meeting have mentioned they would be willing to fund the work of NRIs and national IGF, even from the fines that they receive for any kind of violations. I think it was and human rights violations, NSO, the Pegasus guys. So I think they got a ruling of 155 million at the moment fine from NSO. And we need to just look at diverse sort of funding. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. That's fine. Okay, so sorry, Raul and Cheryl, you've spoken already, and we really need to stop, so we're just going to take Sam and Nii and Sam, and then we're going to really have to cut. We are over.
Thank you very much. I'm not surprised. I'm Nikweno. I used to be part of the first MAG, and for the first decade, quite active at the global level. But in the following decade, I've been more buried in the regional and local activities. I'm traditionally a university teacher, but very, very active in industry. I don't have any magic, but let me propose a thought experiment. Imagine the global IGF were to disappear. How will the IGF philosophy and great value of multi-stakeholder impact in addressing policy-related issues continue? And I'm pushing this because I want us to focus on the internet and realize that we've become top-heavy with a very active global IGF and regional and national, perhaps even risk capture because of lack of participation and so on. So since I'm looking for an expanded application of the multi-stakeholder approach in other areas, not only digital or internet, but maybe even mining and its damage to society and so on, because we really, at the edge, must make strong effort to include many more people in contributing, be their nonsense, but to be factored in policy making. And so I thought if I were to look at it that way, it might change the view regarding how we organize it, how we coordinate it, how we fund it, and so on. I mean, just imagine the other day at a meeting here, I asked to find out how many people are really from my region were using domain names from the region. And it was kind of sad, okay, which means that maybe we have not steered things correctly. And I think this kind of thought experiment might help us go in that direction. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Nee. Okay, you have 2 minutes because we have to get downstairs to be on stage, to be mic'd and on stage.
Well, very quickly, I think first of all, I agree fully with what Chris suggested, the 5 areas and the committee to do them. Regarding the first 2, which is the NRIs and the funding, we have 2 challenges. One of them is that some of the NRIs are not registered. So funding an unregistered entity is a problem. So we need to find ways so we can not fund persons, but fund entity, and how they can become an entity in their place. The second one is they don't have the expertise of fundraising. Some of them, at least, do not have the expertise. And even within our MAG, some of us do not have this expertise. So my suggestion is very simple, straightforward. On the highest level, on the IGF level, we need to hire a funding consultant to put the value proposition, template, the process, and also the benefit of how it is going to be done. So that by that, he would help putting the seed for the NRIs and might help in getting the fund from IGOs. But then they can, at a later stage, get CSR funding from private sector with those proposals. We have really problem in preparing such proposal and submitting it for CSR or for IGOs. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody, and we'll continue online at some point. I think Celine will probably send out for a meeting because you got have like 1 day or 2 hours of break, and we'll be back at it. So give yourselves a round of applause for getting us to this point. Thank you very much. Vint, we'll see you. All right. Constance, bye-bye. Bye, Vint.